Hi, this is Sean Hafer, and in this tutorial, we'll be looking at an introduction to Adobe Illustrator and some of its basic drawing tools. So I've got Illustrator open here, but I don't have an open document. So to do that, I'm going to go up to File, New, or I could hit Command or Control N to create a new document. And then we've got lots of options here. So you've got your recents. We've got options for mobile, web, print, film and video, art and illustration, etc. So if I wanted to come in here and let's say I'm going to do a print document and I want to do a letter size document, that's one of the presets. So I can select that. I want to name it. So I'm just going to call this maybe Intro AI for Adobe Illustrator. Here we've got our width in points. We could also come over here and change that to inches or feet or pica. So you can see that's 8.5 by 11. Our orientation, whether we want it portrait or landscape. And then how many artboards we want inside this document. In this case, we're just going to go 1. That'll be for a later video, but that will give us one 8.5 by 11 document inside our Illustrator file. Down here, another one we might want to look at is the color mode. CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, black. That is for if you're usually sending to a commercial printing press, but for a lot of the printing, for digital printers, etc., RGB color works just fine. And then we'll come in here, everything else seems fine, and we'll go ahead and hit Create. So now we can see we've got inside Illustrator, we've got all of our tools over here. We've got some tools up top and some information. And then we've got our panels over here with our properties, our libraries, and then some more tools going down the left-hand side here. How this workspace is set up, you can always come up to this little icon over here, which will let you switch workspace. And by default, we've got these options. I'm going to do Essentials Classic, which I'm already in. And if you have moved anything around, like say I had maybe pulled out this out, so it was an icon over here, and maybe I had this one over here. I had my color, and I decided to pull that off and maybe move some sizes around on things, right? So this was way, way bigger. If you want to go back to your normal, like default, just come in here, and when you've got it selected, just do Reset Essentials Classic, and that'll get you back to sort of your normal. Now, as we change tools over here, you can see we also change our properties changes depending on the tool we have selected. So if I'm in here, let's talk about a few of the main tools we'll use. Our first one is the selection tool, and that's sort of our black or our arrow right here. And that shortcut is V. That'll let us select objects. Another tool we use today, we're going to use our line tool. That's our line segment tool. That shortcut is that slash key. We also down here, you can see if there's ever a little triangle at the bottom, we can click on that and it'll pull out some other options. If you want to pull that off and make its own palette, you can just click on this little sidebar and then we can have that. So we can see we've got a rectangle tool, rounded rectangle, and ellipse tool. So today we'll do our rectangle tool and our ellipse tool. And then another tool we'll be using here is our scissors tool or our cut tool. So that is shortcut of C to use that. And we'll also use a join to join some segments together. So let's start off with our line tool. Now, when I first come in here, I don't really know. I know by default I have an 8.5 by 11 document, but other than that, I don't know where I really am. I can kind of guess that this is somewhere around the center, etc. So if I want to see where everything is, I want to turn on my rulers. And the way you can do that, you can go up to your View menu, pull down here to Rulers, and then do Show Rulers. And you can see the shortcut for that is Control R. So if I click that, now we can see we've got our rulers at the top shown in inches. If I wanted to switch that to pixels or points, I could just click up here and switch that on the fly. I'm going to go back to inches though, just in this case. And you can see also that measurement starts at this top left corner. So that's our 0, 0 point. If I, for some reason, wanted to change that, I could click up in this corner tool or artboard tool, and I can move that maybe down to the bottom. You can see now that says intersect. And now you can see it's 0 on my X, but my Y 0 starts all the way down here. So that's something if you want to have your measurements start at a certain different spot in your artboard or on your document. And I'm just going to go ahead and drag that back there. Now, once we have rulers, we can also start creating guides. And the way you do that is you just click from inside of a ruler and drag down, and you'll see this sort of light blue line created. And I can go from my other side as well and create a couple guides. Now, when you have these guides created, you could start using that to help you. You can snap to some of these intersections and these lines themselves. And if I come up to my view menu, there's a couple things related to guides that we might want to look at. So if I click on guides here, we can see hide guides. That's kind of important if you want to get them out of the way so you can see just your artwork. That is Command or Control semicolon. All right. And then we also have lock and unlock guides, which is Option Command or Alt Control with your semicolon. So if I went to hide guides here, those are hidden. But if I use my keyboard shortcut of Command or Control plus semicolon, you can see that then I can toggle them on and off. Same thing with that. If I add that Option or Alt key to that and do that semicolon with the Command or Control, I can lock or unlock my guides. Now, the way you'll know if those are locked or unlocked, if we go back to our selection tool up here or hit V, and I try and click on one of these and move it, you can see I can't click and drag it. So that means it's locked. Now, if I unlock those, again, Command or Control plus Option or Alt plus semicolon, now you can see I can drag those guides around. So that lock's really important. If you really have your guides set up and you want to make sure that those stay immovable, go ahead and make sure those are locked. And again, I can come up here and do that in the menu as well. So under Guides, Lock Guides. Cool. So once we have this, the other thing I want to check here is I'm going to go to my View menu again and make sure Smart Guides are on. And that is Command or Control U. So those are on. I just turned them off, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again. And you can see now I can do that, and it's got the check mark. So now what Smart Guides give me, if I roll over certain areas, it says it's a guide, right? And let's go to my line segment tool, which shortcut is slash. So if I roll over here, we can see the shortcut. And so if I do that /, that'll help me select that as well. Now you can see as I roll over things, it says intersect, it says guide. So when two guides are crossing, we get intersect. So if I wanted to create a line, I could kind of hover over here. So I'm right on a guide, click and drag. And then if I go to just that intersect and let go, I've created a line. Now by default, it doesn't have any stroke to it or line weight to it. So if I could look over here now with that line selected, after I've created it, I've got over here, you can see I've got strokes. So if I click on this little icon, I could come down here and maybe give it a black stroke. And you can see now I've got a 1 point stroke on it, or the line weight is 1 point. If I wanted to increase that, I could click on here. I could also just click inside there and say I wanted a 7 point stroke, for example, and hit enter. And there that is. If I knew I wanted a 1/4 inch stroke, right? Even though we're in points right here, if I did 0.25 inch and hit enter, it'll automatically adjust that to 18 points. So you can always sort of type in your different options there. And let's say I wanted to go back down to maybe 4 points. Boom. And by default there. All right. So we've got our line. Now, if I wanted to create a new line, you have to deselect your line. So if I came in here though, after I've created that line, I have some options to sort of move things around. So if I click on this endpoint, you can see I can sort of adjust that. Maybe I want to snap it down to this point, intersect. You can see also there's a little, if I hover close, it turns into a rotation tool. So I can rotate around its center point. And when I let go, you can see there's its center point. If I want to move the whole line, I can just hover right there on that center point and drag it around. Now, if I go back to my selection tool, now you can see I can do those same things with just the selection tool once I select it. And if I want to draw again, I can just hit my /, and maybe I want to draw off of this point, click and drag, and go up to that. And then I could, if I wanted to deselect that, I could go to my V, click somewhere, right? So I'm going to hit V, click out here. That's no longer selected. Hit my /, grab my line tool, draw again. But if I do draw, let me undo here. If I drew that line again, I let go. If I just hold down my Command or Control key, you can see it turns temporarily into the selection tool. So now I could click somewhere else, let go, I'm back to my line tool, and I can draw that line. So if I go back to my selection tool, hitting V, and the thing about this, it looks like a triangle, but they're all still 3 individual lines. If I would want to join those, I did undo to move that back in together. I could just grab my corner points. So I could roll over this, just click and drag with my selection tool, and hit Command or Control J. Same thing if I select these 2 here, Command or Control J to join them. Boom. And now we can see if we click this, we've got one closed path triangle. Okay, so that's joining. That's your line tool. Now we also have some shape tools like the rectangle tool. So let's say I come down here and that shortcut is M and I get my rectangle tool. So the same thing, I could click and drag. So instead of just a line, now we can see we've got a rectangle. We can drag along just the width or along the height. And you can see when you get a square, it gives you that little diagonal. Now, that's, you could do that until you find that diagonal, but an easy way to make sure you always have a square is you just hold down your Shift key while you're dragging. And you can see now I'm constrained to a square. And I could draw that. Now, what if I wanted this to be, let me undo that just by hitting the backspace key or the delete key. So if I wanted to draw it from this corner, and maybe I want to just lock to both of those guides, you can see now I went intersect to intersect, so that's right inside there. Now, if I wanted to draw a square from a point, say this corner of this triangle, and I wanted it to be in the center of my square, the shortcut key for that would be to hold down Option or Alt. So now you can see I'm drawing from the center. And if I wanted to make sure that was not, a rectangle, but also a square here, also hold down Shift. So I've got Shift Option or Shift Alt on PC, and then I can drag out to where I want it and just let go. And then I've got my square. And this does act, if I hit my V key, this does act as one object, right? So I can grab that and move it around. All right, and you can see there my center is at that intersection again. So that's kind of that. So remember those keys. Those shortcut keys are great. If you want it to stay to be a perfect square, then you'll just go ahead and hold down your Shift. And then if you do you want your draw from the center, you want to hold down your Option or your Alt key. Now, another thing is, if say you don't want to click and drag, right off the bat, you want a 1 inch by 1 inch square. So what we could do there, maybe we want a 1 inch by 1 inch square right at the corner of this square. So I could come in here, hit my M for my rectangle tool, and just click. Again, I want to hold down my Command or Control just for a second to get off there. There we go. Now we're deselected. Click it once, and it'll open up a little window that says, well, what kind of rectangle do you want? So I could say I want 1, just hit Tab to jump down, by 1, and hit OK. And then you can see now it drew it from the corner, and I've got my 1 inch by 1 inch square. And if I look over here in my properties panel, you can see here it is 1 inch by 1 inch. What if I wanted it 1 inch or by 2 inches? Well, if I look here, I can see that my proportions are locked. So if I would try and do that, and I hit 2, you can see that one jumped to 2. So that's not what I wanted to do. You want to make sure, if you're in that mode, let me undo. You want to make sure if you don't want it to be proportionate, just go ahead and uncheck that. And now we can see it's not locked. So now I could do 1 inch by 2 inches. And there we go. There's that. And so it just adjusted. If I wanted to rotate this 45 degrees or 30 degrees, I could come up here and type 30 degrees. You can also rotate manually by just hovering near a corner. And if you hold down Shift, it'll lock to every 45 degrees. You could do that. And then you can also grab and scale things by just hitting on these points. So either the corner points, it turns into the little arrows, and you can see you can sort of free transform things that way. So a lot of options on how to do things. Okay. And then our last tool, let's talk about our circle tool or our ellipse tool. Now I'm going to go ahead and just select everything here by dragging around it with my selection tool, and I'm going to hit delete. So those are gone. So circle tool is very similar to the rectangle tool, or I should say the ellipse tool. Sorry, that's right up here. And if I start drawing, it'll draw from that corner, and it'll start drawing an ellipse. And as you drag, you can see you can create an ellipse. So as you might guess, if we hold down our Shift, we'll get a perfect circle, right? And if we hold down our Option or Alt key, it'll draw from the center. So if I knew I wanted a circle right there, and maybe I want it to go right out to this guide, I could let go, and then we've got that circle snapped to those. All right, so that's our circles, and we can look over here and see what our size is. Now with all of these tools, let's say I wanted another one. Maybe I want to copy this. Now, just like any word processing program, you can always do a Control Command C or Control Command V to copy and paste, right? And that'll paste it into the center of our document here. If I undo that, I can also do a copy, so Command or Control C. And if I hold down Shift when I paste, so Shift, Command, or Control V, it will place it exactly in the same spot. So now if I drag this, you can see it's right there. Now if I start dragging and I hold down Shift, it will constrain to either 45 degrees or 90 degrees in either direction, so right there. So if I wanted this to come down and maybe link right there on that intersect, you can see my center is snapping to the intersect. I could let that go there. Now, if I wanted to maybe cut this little piece out of our top circle up here, right? I could do that. So I could take these two, and I want to think about what do I want to cut. So first I'm going to cut this path. I want to create a cut point here and a cut point here. And that tool is our scissors tool, or just the shortcut C. So if I click on that, you can see if I hover over here, I get to intersect. Now, if I wanted to zoom in, I could do that a couple ways. I could use my zoom tool by hitting Z. All right, that's my little magnifying glass here, and I could click and zoom in. I could also use the keyboard shortcuts Command or Control plus and minus, and that'll zoom us in sort of to the center of what we have selected. And those are some of the options there. Now, let's say I'm zoomed in, another important keyboard shortcut. If I'm zoomed way in and maybe I've moved around, so if you hold down spacebar, you'll get a little hand tool and I can kind of drag around to navigate. And maybe I have no idea where I am, and I could hit Command minus, 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 right? Control minus, Control plus. But I can also just hit one little shortcut, which is Command or Control plus 0. And that will zoom us out to show us our entire artboard or our document. So that's another really handy shortcut. But back to this, I'm going to zoom in. Let's come into this point, and I want to get my 2 points where we can see them. So I've got my top circle selected. I'm going to hit C for my cut tool, and I'm going to go over my path until I see intersect, and I'm going to click once. And that creates a new point there. Then I'll come over to this side, do the same thing, make sure I'm on intersect, and that'll give me that perfect cut. And then remember, like in the other tools, if I hold down Command or Control, it turns into my selection tool temporarily, so I can click on that little piece I just cut out. Now you can see that's the only one highlighted in blue, and if I hit delete, that'll delete that piece. So now I want to cut here and here on this piece so I can delete the bottom. So I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about, all right? So I'll hit my V for my select that bottom one, go back to C for my cut tool or click on my little scissors over here. And now this time, same thing. I want to wait until I see intersect, click that, and then come over here, find that path, make sure I'm right on intersect so I get the point exactly where I want it. And now hold down my Command or Control, select this bottom piece that I want to get rid of, and hit delete. Now we can see our points, our edges right here aren't connected, and they're giving us a weird little corner. So to fix that, we can do the same thing. Go back to our selection tool, select those two, Command or Control J to join them. And now you can see we've got our little shape that we had before. And if I go to my selection, it all moves together. All right. So hopefully with guides and your basic shape tools, you could see where you could start creating some really interesting shapes right here with just the line tool, your rectangle tool, and your ellipse tool. And then our big shortcuts of the zoom in, zoom out, right? Command, Control, plus or minus. Super important, super great one is the fit the artboard on screen with our Command or Control and 0. Show and hide our rulers with our Command or Control R. Get rid of those. Zooming in and out with either our, hit our zoom tool if we want to go in to a certain point. Our guides, dragging those in from the outside. And we could also make a guide. I didn't do this, but if we wanted to have another guide in here, but it was going to be maybe this shape that we want to be a guide. If you come in there, you could make that a guide by just coming into View, go down to Guides, and click on Make Guides, or you can see that shortcut is Command or Control 5. So if I click that, now that has become a guide. So I could snap to that now as just a guide. And I'll undo that. All right. And then our line tool is our /, right? That creates our line tool. Shift to constrain that to either 90 or 45 degrees. We've got our rectangle tool, which is M, right? So we can drag that to drag from the center. Remember, holding your Option or Alt. And to constrain to a square, hold down your Shift. Now, another thing I didn't show earlier, but if you want to move this, like I'm like, oh, this is drawn from the center there. That's not quite what I want. But if I also, it gets a little tricky with your hand, but I've got, 2 fingers now, use my thumb to hit spacebar. With spacebar held down, I can drag it. And now let's say I wanted to snap that right to that corner, then let go of my spacebar and my mouse. And now I've got that right there. And also, if you just have one of those selected and you want a certain size, just type in whatever it is, 1, tab 1, and it'll create that to your size. And last but not least, our ellipse tool, shortcut L. Same basic thing. Start drawing from a corner. If you want it from the center, hold down your Option or Alt key. If you want it to be a circle perfectly, hold down your Shift key. And then our cut tool, C for our scissors tool. or click over here on the scissors. And then if you just cut and cut to get back to temporarily to your selection tool, just hold Command or Control, select the part you don't want, and then delete. All right. Well, I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks for watching.